Hey everyone, Pete Calandra here. This is a review video for Class 12 of the film scoring course I teach at the Copeland School of Music, Queens College in the City University of New York. And this is for the fall 2021 semester. Today's class is broken up into 3 topics. The first topic is using techniques inside of a DAW, production skills, editing, processing, automation to enhance the impact of a music cue that you would. The second part of this video talks about performance royalties. I talk about BMI, how that revenue is generated. I show a cue sheet, and then I show actual payouts from several bits that I've had on television. The last part of this class discusses alternative film scores, or music that does not follow the traditional orchestral paradigm. There'll be chapters in the description box below so that you can navigate through this at your own pace. If you like this video, give a thumbs up. For more content, please subscribe, and to be notified, ring that bell. Please leave any comments or questions down below. Thanks so much for watching, and let's get right into it. Hey everyone, how you doing tonight? Welcome to Film Scoring, Wednesday, November the 11th of 2021. Got a lot of stuff to get through tonight. Hopefully we will have no technical issues here with our Zoom and our broadcast. But before I start, anybody start on the final yet?
A little bit.
Uh-huh.
I'm doing the Harry Potter one.
Which one? There's two. There's two.
The scene from Goblet of Fire when they're running through the what do you call it? Running through the the maze.
Cool. Well, don't wait much longer. Get started. That's what I can counsel you all to do. So we have tonight I have a bunch of things to get through. I want to go over something that I'm working on this week. I don't want to spend too much time with it, but I do want to just go over a few things and make a few points. I'm going to talk a little bit about business and BMI, performance royalties, and then we're going to talk about storytelling, and hopefully we'll have some time to look at alternative film scores. So I want to keep an eye on the clock and make sure I'm not too bogged down in any one of these sections. But feel free to ask questions as you wish. So again, this is the same project that I talked about last week. And one of the things I wanted to show you, and I've been started to show this a little bit to my Audio MIDI 2 class, although this is not a piece that I showed them, is there are things that you can do in software that you can't in a digital audio workstation that you simply cannot do inside of notation software. So that if any of you want to pursue this with more diligence as a viable adjunct to your career or as a career, you're going to have to become an expert almost at an expert at using a digital audio workstation, right? You're really going to have to know how to use it. And I say that with one caveat, that we don't know where technology is going to go in 10 years. But I do know that over the last 20 years, films have been pretty much exclusively scored in DAWs. And then if live players are needed, sheet music is extracted from that and printed up by an orchestrator. So, and let me just show you a few things and I'll talk about it. So this is, I'm going to take it from the middle of this cue. Well, I'll take it, let me play it from the beginning. And then I'll stop it before it gets too far. Here we go. Okay, let me stop it there. Now, all this information up here, this is all MIDI information. And I composed using MIDI. And I got a pretty good sounding mix in the MIDI world. Then I used all these bluish tracks here. These are all stem mixes, right? And basically what I did was, with a few exceptions, I took these coded sections, that and this, and I mixed all of those down to a stereo track, every one of those. Basically, there's a couple of exceptions. And those instruments are all grouped by category. So, for example, this is the drum kit without the kick drum. Right, and then I kept the kick drum on a separate track because I like to have a little bit more control over it. Right, and then I've got like these big drums, which is a combination of those big drums and timpanis and a few other things. Yeah, you could hear the timpani there. Then I've got this FX percussion right here, right? This is a singular thing, which really is a cool sound. And let me just show you how it plays into the track. So we're in D minor. And then right here, I do a quick jump up half step. I wouldn't call that a modulation because it's not prepared, right? It's just an unprepared key change. And that's something that I do a lot in my film scores. I change keys, very often unprepared, because it helps. It works well with picture change for this type of a film. So leading up to that, I've got this, and I'm going to solo these two things, this track and this track. So what is this, right? What I did was I copied this, and then I copied that, and then I pasted it on this other track that is a stem track that didn't have any information on it. So I used it as an auxiliary track, and it's got all my routings and everything. And then I took this and I simply reversed it using an audio suite process, right? And then, actually, let me move this over here because I have some other things going on. Right? Let's see. Give me one sec. Here we go. So what I thought was it would be really nice to have something swoosh into this here. So there are two other things I did. I put a filter on it because there was too much low end and it really was very muddy. So I just chopped some of that low end off, and then I put it through this black hole reverb, which gives it, just a very ethereal sound, and the sound rings over and blends in well with the hit and adds almost like a cymbal roll, but it's a synthesized cymbal roll. And then the other thing I did was to get a more of a crescendo, I did some volume automation, right? So without the volume automation, let's do this. It would sound like this. Right? And with the volume automation, you get more of a rush right at the end. Can't do that with notation. Okay? And you can't really orchestrate something like that. That's something that I would strongly urge all of you to, at some point, learn how to do some sound design, which is what this is. You're learning how to use your technology to create sounds that you normally couldn't get. You're processing the sound. So that's one thing. Then let's take a listen to the kick drum. right here, this bit here. So for those of you that don't know, every one of these little bits, that's a kick drum hit, right? But you're hearing many more notes, right? You're hearing sort of like a funky rhythm. And the sound is changing as it's moving forward. And there's our regular kick drum. Okay, so what am I doing? Okay, so I've got this filter plug-in, right? Which is, you see that white synthesizer in the back there? That's an Oberheim 2-Voice Pro. This is the same filter as is on that, and I love the filter. It's really got some really cool bandpass things that you can do. And then I've got this thing called color copy, which is a digital delay, which is an analog style delay. All right. And then you'll notice that when I click on what the track is to view, I've got these amber bits with information. Because if those of you that have taken MIDI audio classes with me, I've taught you that when you look here and in this area and you see, and also on the MIDI editor, and you see something amber, that means that there's information there. So let's take a look at what we've done. Good. So we're just going to look at the SEM right now. Great. Okay, so right, you see I've got, I'm not doing much moving the resonance around, but I've set it up so that it's right here. Now, what is resonance? So this is a cutoff filter, right? And I've got it set to high pass. So that means it's getting rid of some of the low end. That's why it sounds like a really... And what the resonance does is it emphasizes frequencies that the cutoff filter is set to. It adds amplitude to those, right? So it just changes the timbre of the sound is all you really need to know right now. But you could see that right now this is moving down to the left. And as it moves to the left, the sound gets deeper. And then when we get right here, we're going to see this turn amber. See that? And that's bypass now. So that, again, automating these parameters. And then let's look at the color copy. I have the master bypass on this one, right? So it just turns it on and off. So what I've got this set up for is that the left signal, if you guys are doing original sound, you should be able to hear this in stereo, is doing an eighth note, and the right side is doing a dotted eighth note. And then I've got it set up here with, I played around with the color, I made it a little darker here, and I made sure that my regeneration, for those of you that have been taking class, that's the same as feedback. I've got that set, and I've got it set pretty wet for a delay. If you're going to plug a delay right into something, it really should be down around, not even at 9 o'clock in a knob like this. I usually teach people to do sends, but this is a specific effect that's going to be automated on this track, so I inserted it into the track. So basically, it's adding all those other rhythms to the drum. That's bypassed. And then when we get to this area here, you'll see it. This will turn amber and it will get bypassed and the echo will stop. Right? These are the kinds of things you can't do in a notation software. So let's listen to that little bit there. The bass drum is slowly fading in. Okay, so that's one thing. Then right here is a cool effect. So I'm going to solo these two tracks. So this is the drum kit, and then there's a little something here. Okay. Let me just play the drum kit. So there's that little fill there, right? I kind of like that. Right, and if I'm going to mute this right now so you don't hear this track will be muted. But in the track, this little fill, it didn't do anything for me. You know, it was a little boring. So what I did was I copied it and pasted it right here, and then I transposed it down an octave using an Audio Suite plugin. Right, so you guys, you can use pitch 2. I use this sound shifter parametric, which you probably don't have because it's a wave plugin, but pitch shift 2 works pretty well. So I'm going to turn off these two things, the color copy and oh, those are automated. I'll just solo that. Here we go. Right, you got that wash of sound, and it's coming out of both sides of the headphone. So I transposed that down an octave, and then I did the similar stuff, right? I've got that delay only happening till this point here, and then the shimmer reverb similar, and then one band EQ. Let's see, where does that come in? Yeah, so right here, that's muted because I want the full frequency. But later on in the track, when this is playing this, right, I wanted to get rid of some of the low end on that. So that all three of those fit together, and they don't get in each other's way. Like these two are very complementary. Right, and nothing's in the way of the kick drum. So that's stuff that you can't really know when you're doing notation software. You know, this is only stuff when you learn how to do some mixing and some sound designing. And to be honest with you, if you're going to work in this field, these are skills that you need to build up to. It doesn't mean you need to know how to do all this stuff tomorrow, but you do need to just, at some point, think about this stuff. So then one other thing I did that's kind of cool, it's a little homage to a favorite sound of mine from my teenage years, and I'll show you in a second. So let's listen to this. This is the very end section. Okay, so let's take a look at that last hit, right? So on the end, I've got the piano is doing, and it's playing that low note. And then there's this spacey sound here. But there's one other element. There's this. Right, and that's interesting, right? So what I got is the piano with its attack hitting and fading out, and then a reverse piano fading in at the same time. Right, and that's not something you can write in notation. And this is like one of the big reversed sounds. Examples of reverse sound is from the song on the album Fragile by Yes called Roundabout. The song starts off with Steve Howe playing a beautiful guitar intro. He's playing those harmonics. It starts off like this. Something like that, right? And then, but before that, you hear you hear this sound, except it fades in from nothing. And what Rick Wakeman did was he played a low note on the piano, an E, and then they just flipped the tape around and played it backwards and edited it so the end of that piano note happened right when the guitar harmonic started. So, you know, you get these sounds in your head and you figure out what they are, and then you can vary them and use them as the basis to discover new ways of orchestrating things. Because you could, you know, play that note on the piano and then turn the volume up, but you won't get that kind of brightness that, you know, the beginning attack of the piano is very bright compared to the end decay. So you get that swell, and as it's getting louder, the timbre is also shifting. You can't really do that on a piano in the real world, right? That's not the way it works. All right, so that's some production stuff I wanted to show you. And then, you know, over here, I just made a bunch of different mixes. So this is just a shorter mix, right? It's just shorter. The sections, instead of, and what you guys would do if you're writing in notation is you would, you know, copy your notation and then rewrite stuff. I did this all in MIDI. But what I did was I selected everything. Just like this, right? And I used, so let's say I selected all of this and I included stuff up in my rulers. So I got my tempo. And what I've done is I've copied all the MIDI information as well, so that when I'm editing this stuff, I'm also editing the MIDI information in case I have to go back and reprint something. I can do it pretty easily. So I just copied this and pasted it further down the timeline, and it pastes all my tempo changes and everything. So that works out really well as a working method. And then okay, where am I? Okay, so now there's a reflective mix right here. So this is the bit I wanted to play you. Right. So, I did all that from editing, not from re-recording anything. So that's just another reason why learning these skills can really increase the amount of output that you can generate in a short amount of time of high quality stuff. There were a few things in there that I possibly could have done better. Like there was one area before the key change. I thought maybe if I have the time, I might go back and add like 2 beats of just ambience hanging over from the previous sounds. I might do that, but aside from that, that's different. And then I made just a vamp mix, which is just the like. So those of you that took Audio MIDI 1, right, we did the remix as the final project for that class. Now you can see like why I would have you do that kind of work, because that type of stuff that you did there, where I gave you those stems from all those songs by Queen, by the Beatles, by Radiohead, Motown, all that stuff, Stevie Wonder. You use those stems, and all of you did a really interesting job transitioning those, repurposing all those stems, adding your own MIDI tracks and creating completely original arrangements, right, with a combination of audio editing and MIDI work. Well, here I'm just doing audio editing on the stem level, right, which is why having stems really is very helpful. So, okay, so that's about 25 minutes on this. I don't want to go crazy with this. Any questions on this? Oh, I see. So Charlie, so in the chat room, right? So that's another topic of conversation. I have a lot of technology, right, in this computer. I mean, if you look at my plugin list, it's ginormous. I didn't get these things all in one day. And to be honest with you, I feel like going through here and getting rid of like 50% of them I don't use. Right, they're just in there. I didn't acquire them all in one day. I that's like 20 years worth of purchases, right? And just updating when the updates come out and making sure that they're all compatible with Pro Tools, the latest version of whatever DAW that you would be using. But there are times every year where you can get deals, and Black Friday after Thanksgiving, that you can get deals on virtually any kind of software that you might want. What I would say is if you want to do this, to figure out a way to get an inexpensive version of Contact. Tay, it works. It's the same for all DAWs, but I'm working in Pro Tools now. But what I'm talking about now applies for Logic, Cubase, Digital Performer, Ableton, Reaper. So you can get deals on software. What I would say, if you were really interested in doing this, is to find a cheap way to get the full version of Contact. And one of the ways to do that is to get a library that uses Contact. And what typically manufacturers do is they make it Contact Player compatible. And Contact Player only plays back the programs. You cannot program your own samples. Once you've done that, I believe, and you'd have to do some research on this, that it's much cheaper to cross-grade to Contact, because Contact is a very expensive piece of software. But it's a great piece of software, because another skill is to create your own sounds. And we did that in Audio MIDI 2 this semester, and Charlie, you did that when you took Audio MIDI 2, and learned the basics of sample programming. And when we're in regular times, meeting in person, all of the computers in the lab have contact in it, and we can get into some more detailed programming as opposed to using structure free, which we've been doing for the past 3 semesters, because of that's what comes with Pro Tools, which is actually a bit of a joke that they offer something that's so pathetic, but that's another story. So anyway, that's enough of this. I'd like to move forward into the next topic, unless there's questions. Now, this next bit, I'm going to show you guys, I'm going to show you some really personal information that I'm going to chop out of this. I'm not putting this up for general consumption on the internet, because it's just, but the reason I'm doing this is I want to show you what's possible in the world, right? So I've spoken about this a little bit before, but the way to generate, let's go back. And I always say, I teach what I know. I teach my experience. I don't use textbooks when I teach. I create my own classes. And the reason I do that is because I want to show the students methods that work. There are other methods that work too, and there are other methods that might have certainly some better ways of doing things than I can think of, but my methods do work, and I'm always updating them and trying to get them better and researching and trying to learn more about this stuff, even at my advanced age. But let's go back to, I don't know, 1993 or 1994. I was playing the principal keyboard book in Miss Saigon, which was a huge Broadway hit. And I'd already been playing shows for 12 years by 1994. I started my first shows when I was in 1982. And I started playing in clubs when I was 15. And, you know, in high school, I was playing in clubs. I paid for Queens College by playing in bar bands, playing in wedding bands. I was typically, there was one year where I drove a cab on weekends in the city because I was just really burnt out from the grind. And I just wanted to not work during the week. And, it was an interesting experience. But typically when I was going to college as an undergraduate student, I was working 5 nights a week, making between $15 and $40 during a week. And then when I started playing weddings on the weekends, I was getting paid $65 or $75 and sometimes $100 for a wedding. And, this is like between 1978 and 1982. And then I was in school all day long. So I didn't sleep much. So I remember there were times where I would get done with a gig at like 3 a.m, pack up my stuff, drive my car into Flushing. And, there's that parking lot behind the music building. Those used to be homes, like buildings there that people lived in. Those got torn down. And I used to just pull my car in there and sleep in the car for a few hours. And then I'd have choir at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. I'd get into the school at I'd have an alarm clock. It'd wake me up. I'd just go into the bathroom and wash up. And I'd still be wearing the same smelly clothes from the night before and go to choir. And that sort of was the existence. So by the time 1994 got around, I was like starting to get burnt out from the grind of playing piano. And also I started seeing that, and I saw this often when I was younger, that I started looking at people that were 10 or 15 years older than me that I was working with. So for example, when I was 18 years old, 19 years old, and 20 years old, I was playing in some of these bar bands and wedding bands especially. I was playing with people that were twice my age, right? And this is what they were still doing. And I would hang myself if that was what I ended up. So always looking ahead. What can I do next? Where can I go? So it's, I'm in this big hit show and I've got comfortable income for the foreseeable future. So I was I was reading an article on my train rides, my commute to the theater, on subway, about Paul McCartney and how he amassed his fortune. And I've alluded to this before, probably, is that Paul McCartney did not amass most of his fortune from being in the Beatles. That gave him a good start, and that certainly made him a lot of money, writing all those songs. But what he started doing in the late 60s and early 70s, and he was really the first person that did this, and I don't know who advised him about this or whether he thought about it himself, but whoever advised him or whatever told him this was very smart. He started buying up publishing and song catalogs. And I definitely have mentioned this before, that he owns the Buddy Holly catalog. He owns Grease. He owns Anything Goes. He owns like an amazing amount of publishing. And his net worth is over $1 billion, right? Just from all this stuff, right? And what that is intellectual property rights. And intellectual property rights state, and I believe I've said this before in our class, or I know I've said it before in many other classes, but the intellectual property rights laws say that if somebody's using your intellectual property to generate a profit, then you are entitled to share in that profit, right? So I started reading this and I started thinking about it. And I came back to Queens. I got my master's degree while I was working at Miss Saigon. You know, it took me a while, but I finished it. And all this time during the day, I was, you know, working on my piano playing, but I was also learning all this technology that I'm teaching now. And I decided that I wanted to switch away from being a player and work more on writing music for a living. But I needed skills, right? I needed to get better as a composer, and I needed to develop my technology skills more. So that what happened was, by the end of the 1990s, starting in about 1997, I started meeting people and getting hired to write music, to get paid to write music for television. And I started out for about 4 years writing production music. So my first big job was writing promo music for Fox Television and promo highlight music for Fox Sports. So basically 2-minute pieces of music, and then I had to do cut downs, like 30-second, 60-second, 15-second, 10-second. That's where I started learning how to do audio editing, right? And then that went on for a couple of years, and then I started getting work from this other company called Killer Tracks, which was a big library company, production music company in Los Angeles. And I wrote about 225 tracks for them, right? And production music, and I've mentioned this also before, but let me just repeat it, at that time was topical. So this company would put out a CD and it would be called Drama, or Acid Jazz, or Solo Piano, or News Themes, or Retail, or Holiday, and they'd assign several composers to write different percentages of the number of tracks on the album. So let's say there were 12 tracks on the album. I might get 3, another guy might get 2, another guy might not get 4. And what they would do is they'd have a whole stable of composers, and they would assign the number based upon what they thought the strengths of that composer was. So, for example, there was an Acid Jazz CD they put out that 12 tracks, they hired me to write 10 of them. So, and then that led to me getting a job for NBC, writing 125 pieces of music for the 2000 Olympics. So I started writing all this stuff, and all this stuff started getting on air. And it took like several years. But what ended up happening was that I started getting what are called performance royalties. And performance royalties are monies doled out by PROs, performing rights organizations, and there are 3 in the United States. There's ASCAP, CSAC, and the one I belong to, which is BMI. And this is relevant for film. I'll show you how this is relevant for film, because there are a lot of films that are on television right now. And so what the, the the main purpose of television is to sell advertising. That's it. Everything else is to get viewers' eyeballs on the screen so they could sell advertising. And ratings and advertising. So a network has a certain amount of income from advertising, and their shows have ratings. So what a company like an organization like BMI does is they get the information as to how much revenue a network has, and they negotiate a percentage of that revenue to be paid to the PRO, and the PRO distributes it to the composers. And the way that it's distributed is that if the network or the broadcasting entity has a license with BMI, then they are paying, the negotiated percentage. And what BMI has to do is they have to take in things called cue sheets. And remember, I had you guys do spotting notes, but I don't think I had you guys do a cue sheet yet. Is that correct? I don't think I've done that with this class yet.
No, not yet.
Okay, so we're not going to do it, but I'm going to show you cue sheets that I've done and why it's important. So you fill out a cue sheet, or if it's library music, the network fills out cue sheets, which is really dicey, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. And the cue sheets get handed into the PRO. So what the PRO does is they figure out the total number of minutes of music every quarter on a network. Then they look at the ratings and the income for each quarter, right? And the higher the show is rated, the more it pays out. Now, these rules have been evolving over the last 20 years. It used to be the basic concept is the same, but it used to be that networks paid a certain amount for prime time and for non-prime time, but now it's about rating. And it just happens to be that prime time is rated a certain way. It typically has better ratings than 3 in the morning. So, and the networks pay much more than cable entities because they get more viewers typically, and so they charge higher advertising rates. And as I've mentioned before, the highest rated show is the Sunday night NBC football show. Typically, football is very highly rated. It's been going down in the last couple of years, I believe, but it's still the highest rated broadcasting. The Super Bowl is like the biggest thing ever every year, although the Beatles had a higher percentage of people watching it than the Super Bowl when they were on the Ed Sullivan Show. One sec. Okay, so let's talk about cue sheets. Now, the idea is that if you're playing music for a living, like I'll just again talk about my experience. So I started out at Little Shop of Horrors, which was a very big off-Broadway show, which became a big, a movie, Hollywood movie. And then there's been revivals of it on Broadway and all over the world, thousands of productions. I was the music director of that show. I started out subbing on the keyboard book. Then I took over the keyboard book. I played the keyboard book for a couple of years. And I learned the piano book, and I moved over and I played piano and conducted when the music director was on leaves of absence. And then eventually I took over for the last 2.5 years as the music director. So it was a 5-year period of time. And in that time, I took a leave of absence, and I was in the Radio City Music Hall for a summer, Radio City Music Hall Orchestra for a summer, which was kind of interesting. 2 shows a day, six days a week. not like working in the Christmas show. I have a lot of friends that are working in the Christmas show now, and they get to do 8, 9, 10 shows a day sometimes. That's another whole entity. Anyway, the show closed and I was unemployed. Right? So, how do you generate income? And how do you navigate the world as a professional musician? You navigate the world as a professional musician many different ways. But one way to navigate is to have a bunch of things going on at once. So I was playing piano keyboards for a living. That's all I was doing. I was getting other gigs playing keyboards. I was accompanying singers. I was doing little tours. I was doing some recording work. I was playing jazz gigs and other kinds of gigs in the city. And if I wasn't gigging, I wasn't earning. So once I read this thing about Paul McCartney, I started moving in a direction and trying to find people that I could apply my talents to, and I started getting these production music jobs. And what was great about those jobs was that I was learning to write write stylistically correct music for whatever the topic was. And it was forcing me to get my act together for mixing and recording and technology, because I got some money up front. But if I had to spend money to engineer, mix, and there would be, I couldn't pay my bills by doing that. So I had to learn how to be self-sufficient. And I learned a lot of skills, and these are skills that I'm teaching you guys. I learned it on the job. Trial and error, asking questions. I rented a space on 49th Street, a room that's smaller than the room I'm in now. And there were 3 other engineers in the same space. They all had their own room. So I was the only composer, and I was sharing a space with 3 engineers, right? So I asked a lot of questions, and I watched, and, I learned a lot from these other people that were great engineers. So what you want to do is you want to get intellectual property into the marketplace and have it work for you and be a revenue stream. So multiple things. So up until about 2016, Miss Saigon closed in 2001. By that point, I could earn a living writing music. So, and I was sick of playing the piano, so I didn't touch a piano for 4 months. But I was going down to my studio every day, and I was working. Then, by the end of the year, I started missing it, and I started learning one of the keyboard books at Lion King, and I started subbing there, and then I learned a second book, and I subbed there for 15 years, right? And sometimes I was working 120 shows a year, sometimes 130 or 40, sometimes 90, but it was steady work over the long haul. So I was writing music during the day. I was playing 2, 3, 4 nights a week sometimes, depending upon the week. Some weeks and I wasn't playing at all. I was still getting other gigs playing out. And starting 9 years ago, or 10 years ago, I started teaching at the college. So I had 3 different streams of revenue where I was getting paid up front to work. And additionally, I was building up a catalog of music on television that was bringing me in performance royalties. And I got very fortunate that I had the opportunity to write somewhere between 40 and 50 theme songs for nationally broadcast sporting programs. I wrote stuff for the Big Ten Network, for Comcast Sportsnet, for Fox Sports, for the Madison Square Garden Network, for SNY here in New York. And I had at one point like 35 theme songs running at the same time. And theme songs pay higher than background instrumental music. So my quarterly income was significant, like incredibly significant. So let's move forward though, and let's show you some cue sheets, and then we'll talk about some of that other stuff. All right, so this is a little cue sheet. This is very basic, and this is for the 2016 Kennedy Center Honors. And I wrote a bunch of music for that, but this is just for the three films I wrote scored for about Al Pacino. Right, so it's about let's see, it's about 5.5 minutes worth of music, 5 minutes and 10 seconds worth of music. So, right, you got the title up here, CBS 2016 Kennedy Center Honors cue sheet, and then you can just download these forms online. You fill in as much as you can, and you don't hand this in. The production company that you're working with or the network hands it in. So we've got the production company, the address, and the network station. And then I just had three films that I scored, so there were just 3 cues. So I made the title, which was the title of the film, Pacino Early Years, Pacino Stage, and Pacino TV Films. And the usage, let's talk about usage. So there are codes right here. TO is opening theme. VI is visual instrumental. BV is background vocal, VV is visual vocal, TC is theme close, and BI is background instrumental. So opening theme and theme close used to be separate, and you could double dip by writing an opening theme with one title, changing it a little bit, writing a closing theme with a second title, and then you get paid for 2 themes. Now they've combined that all into just theme total. So that's been in the past couple of years. Like I said, these things are always evolving. Each one of these things pays at a different rate combined with the ratings and the revenue from the broadcaster. So I typically write either a theme song, or background instrumental. So I've got use, background instrumental. I've got the timing. I've got the composer and the affiliation. I'm in BMI, and the percentage. That's how much of the composer's share that you own. And then the publishing is my publishing company, Pika Music, and I share that with Lookalike, 50%. That's our agreement. 50-50, although I own the copyrights to this music. Okay. So let's take a look at something here. So that gets on air. You see that 5 minutes worth of music, right? Paid me out $1,117 additionally from what I got paid to score the film. And then I owned half the publishing, so I got another $550 on top of that. So I got $1,600 or $1,700 from that because it was on network television. Let me just show you how this works here. So this is the network, Kennedy Center Honors 2016. That's the show. 203 count. That's the this is why network pays so much, because there are 203 affiliates across America that carried this. Every area in the United States has an CBS affiliate, and all those affiliates combine together to create a network. So I didn't have a work number for here. Use, BI, timing 525, period. 2016 4. That's the 4th quarter of 2016. Your percentage, 100%. And then this is the pay. And then they've got super usage and theme bonus. And this is your royalty amount. And so this is 4th quarter of 2016. This paid out in June of 2017. So it's on a 3-quarter delay. Okay, let's take a look at another one. So this is a film I scored that was on CNN, and it was titled 41 on 41. So it was a takeoff on the ESPN series 30 for 30. And basically it was 41 people talking about the 41st president of the United States. I've got 32 cues, and then the Oak Ridge Boys did the closing theme, which we did as a featured vocal. So we've got all these backgrounds, but then I've got the open, which was a theme open. It was only 10 seconds long. And this one, I kept the publishing on everything. So I owned everything on this. And these are all the names of the titles of all the... So there's like at least there's over an hour's worth of music in this film. It was a 90-minute film, right? 75 minutes worth of music, 10 seconds worth of opening theme. The count is 1. It's just on CNN. And then this one, there's a work number for the opening theme that got registered separately. 2014 third quarter. I owned 100% of the songwriting, and my total was $2,096. So think about this, right? This is CNN cable. I had 75 minutes worth of music. It paid $2,096, and 5 minutes worth of music on CBS paid $1,100. Right? If I had a 75-minute film on CBS, it would have paid like $20,000. So this is cable. And the whole thing paid $2,146, plus I owned all the publishing, so I got twice that number.